Welcome to the Sonoma County Library video channel. We post new videos every week, so bookmark, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Hi everyone, my name is Miss Kim from the Sonoma County Library, and welcome to Book Read-Alouds at Home. Get comfortable and get ready to listen to a chapter book a week read out loud to you. Feel free to check out the ebook from our library website, sonomalibrary.org, so you can follow along, or just relax, close your eyes, and listen. Now, grab your pillow, grab your blanket, get comfortable.
Chapter 6. Cinder slinked through the balmy night, the sound of her boots shuffling across the concrete as if both legs were made of steel. The empty night was a chorus of muted sounds in her head, the sandy crunching of Aiko's treads, the sputtering of street lamps above them, the constant hum of the magnetic superconductor beneath the street. With every step, the wrench inside Cinder's calf clinked. It all dulled in comparison to the video replaying in her mind. Her interface did that sometimes, recording moments of strong emotion and replaying them over and over, like a déjà vu, when the last words of a conversation linger in the air long after silence had settled in. Usually, she could make the memory stop before it drove her crazy, but tonight, she didn't have the energy. The black splotch on Peony's skin, her scream, the Medroid's syringe dragging Cinder's blood from the flesh of her elbow, Peony, small and trembling on the gurney, already dying. She stopped, clutching her stomach as nausea rolled up. Aiko paused for a few paces ahead, shining her spotlight on Cinder's scrunched face. "Are you all right?" The light darted down the length of Cinder's body, and she was sure Aiko was searching for bruise-like rings, even though the Medroid had said she wasn't infected. Instead of answering, Cinder peeled off her gloves and shoved them into her back pocket. Her faintness passing, she leaned her shoulder against a street lamp and drank in the humid air. They made it home, almost. The Phoenix Tower apartment stood on the next corner, only the top floor catching the faint light from the crescent moon above, the rest of the building cast in shadow. The windows were black, but for a handful of lights and some bluish-white glares flickering net screens. Cinder counted floors, finding the windows to the kitchen and Audrey's bedroom. Though dim, a light was still on somewhere in the apartment. Audrey wasn't a night person, but perhaps she'd discover that Peony was still out. Or perhaps Pearl was awake, working on a school project, or calming friends late into the night. It was probably better this way. She didn't want to have to wake them. What am I going to tell them? Aiko's sensor was on the apartment building for a moment, then the ground, picking up the shuffled debris across the sidewalk. Cinder rubbed her sweaty palm on her pants and forced herself onward. Try as she might, suitable words would not come to her. Explanations, excuses. How do you tell a woman her daughter is dying? She swiped her ID and entered through the main door this time. The gray lobby was decorated only with a net screen that held announcements for the residents. A rise in maintenance fees, a petition for a new ID scanner at the front door, a lost cat. Then the elevator, loud with the clunking of old machinery. The hallway was empty, save the man from apartment 1807 snoozing on his doorstep. Cinder had to tuck in his splayed arm so Aiko wouldn't crush it. Heavy breathing and the sweet aroma of rice wine wafted up. She hesitated in front of apartment 1820, heart pounding. She couldn't recall when the video of Peony had stopped repeating in her head, eclipsed by her harsh nerves. What was she going to say? Cinder bit her lip and held up her wrist for the scanner. The small light switched to green. She opened the door as quietly as possible. Brightness from the living room spilled into the dark hallway. Cinder caught a glimpse of the net screen, still showing footage of the market from earlier that day. The baker's booth going up in flames again and again. The screen was muted. Cinder entered the room, but halted mid-step. Aiko bumped against her leg. Facing her from the middle of the living room were 3 androids with red crosses painted on their spherical heads. Emergency medroids. Behind them, Audrey in her silk bathrobe stood against the mantel, although the holographic fire was turned off. Pearl was still fully clothed, sitting on the sofa with her knees pulled up to her chin. They were both holding dry washcloths over their noses and eyeing Cinder with a mixture of repulsion and fear. Cinder's stomach clenched. She drew a half step back into the hallway, wondering which of them was sick, but she quickly realized that neither of them could be. The androids would have taken them immediately. They wouldn't have been protecting their breaths. The entire building would be on lockdown. She noticed a small bandage on Audrey's elbow. They'd already been tested. Cinder shifted her messenger bag, settling it on the ground, but kept the mag belt. Audrey cleared her throat and lowered the cloth to her sternum. She looked like a skeleton in the pale lighting, measly skin and jutting bones. Without makeup, dark circles swelled beneath her bloodshot eyes. She'd been crying, but now her lips were set in a stiff line. "I received a comm an hour ago," she said, once silence had congealated the room. "It informed me that Peony was picked up in the Tanghai District Junkyard and taken—" Her voice broke. She dropped her gaze. When she looked up again, her eyes were flashing. "But you know that already, don't you?" Cinder shifted, trying not to look at the medroids. Without waiting for Cinder's answer, Audrey said, "Aiko, you can begin disposing of Peony's things. Anything she wore in the past week can all go to the waste collection. But take it to the alley yourself. I don't want it clogging up the chutes. I suppose everything else can be sold at the market." Her voice was sharp and steady, as if this list had been repeating in her head from the moment she received the news. "Yes, Linji," said Aiko, wheeling back into the hallway. Cinder stayed, frozen, both hands clutching the mag belt like a shield. Though the android was incapable of ignoring Audrey's commands, it was clear from her slowness that she didn't want to leave Cinder alone, so long as the medroids were watching with their hollow yellow sensors. "Why?" said Audrey, wringing the washcloth. "Why was my youngest daughter at the Taihang District Junkyard this evening?" Cinder drew the mag belt against her, lining it up from shoulder to toe. Made of the same steel as her hand and equally tarnished, it felt like an extension of her. "She came with me to look for a mag belt." She drew in a heavy breath. Her tongue felt swollen, her throat closing in. I'm so sorry. I saw the spots and I called the emergency hover. I didn't know what to do." Tears puddled in Audrey's eyes briefly before she blinked them away. She dropped her head, staring down at the twisted cloth. Her body sagged against the mantel. "I wasn't sure that you'd come back here, Cinder. I expected to receive another comm at any minute telling me that my ward had also been taken." Audrey pulled her shoulders back, lifting her gaze. The weakness passed. Her eyes darkened. "These medroids tested Pearl and myself. The plague has not yet spread to either of us." Cinder started to nod, relieved, but Audrey continued. "Tell me, Cinder, if Pearl and I are not carrying the disease, where did Peony get it from?" "I don't know." "You don't know? But you did know about the outbreak at the market today." Cinder's lips parted. Of course, the cloths, the medroids, they thought she was infected." "I don't understand you, Cinder. How could you be so selfish?" She jerked her head. "No, they tested me too at the junkyard. I don't have it. I don't know where she got it from." She held out her arm, showing the bruise blooming on her inner elbow. "They can check again if they want to." One of the little medroids showed its first sign of life, shining the light at a small red spot where the needle had pricked her. They didn't seem to move, and Audrey didn't encourage them. Instead, she turned her attention to a small framed port screen on the mantel, shuffling through pictures of Pearl and Peony in their childhood. Pictures at their old house, the one with the garden. Pictures with Audrey before she lost her smile. Pictures with their father. "I'm so sorry," said Cinder. "I love her too." Audrey squeezed the frame. "Don't insult me," she said, sliding the frame closer to her. "Do your kind even know what love is? Can you feel anything at all, or is it just programmed?" She was talking to herself, but the words stung. Cinder risked a glance at Pearl, who was still sitting on the sofa with her face half hidden behind her knees, but she was no longer holding the washcloth to her face. When she saw Cinder looking at her, she turned her gaze to the floor. Cinder flexed her fingers against the mag belt. "Of course I know what love is." "And sadness, too." She just wished she could cry to prove it. Good, then you will understand what I am doing is what a mother must do to protect my children. Audrey turned the frame face down on the mantel. On the couch, Pearl turned her face away, pressing her cheek against her knees. A tendril of fear curled in Cinder's stomach. Audrey? It has been 5 years since you became a part of this household, Cinder. 5 years since Garin left you to me. I still don't know what made him do it. Don't know why he felt obligated to travel to Europe, of all places, to find some mutant to take care of. He never explained it to me. Perhaps he would have some day. But I never wanted you. You know that. Cinder pursed her lips. The blank-faced medroids leered up at her. She did know it, but she didn't think Audrey had ever put it so clearly. Garin wanted you to be taken care of, so I've done my best. Even when he died, even when the money ran out, even when everything fell apart. Her voice cracked, and she pressed one palm firmly against her mouth. Cinder watched her shoulders tremble, listened to the short gasps of breath as she tried to stifle the sobs. But Garin would have agreed. Peony comes first. Our girls come first. Cinder started at the raised voice. She could hear the justification in Audrey's tone, the determination. Don't leave me with this thing. She shuddered. Audrey, if it weren't for you, Garin would still be alive. And Peony... No, it's not my fault. Cinder spotted a flash of white, saw Aiko loitering in the hallway, uncertain. Her sensor had gone nearly black. Cinder searched for her voice. Her pulse was throbbing, white spots flickering across her vision. A red warning flickered in the corner of her eye, a recommendation that she should calm down. I didn't ask to be made like this. I didn't ask for you or anyone to adopt me. This isn't my fault. It isn't my fault either, Audrey laughed out, shoving the net screen off its brackets with one shove. It fell and crashed, taking 2 of her husband's achievement plaques down with it. Bits of plastic ricocheted across the worn carpet. Cinder jumped back, but the frenzy fled as fast as it had come. Audrey's ragged breaths were already slowing down. She was always so careful not to disturb the neighbors, not to be noticed, not to cause a commotion, not to do anything that could ruin their reputation. Even now. Cinder, said Audrey, chafing her fingers with the washcloth as if she could erase her temper. You will be going with these medroids. Don't make a scene. The floor shifted. What? Why? Because we all have a duty to do what must be done, and you know what a high demand there is for your type, especially now. She paused. Her face had gone pink and molted. We can still help Peony. They just need cyborgs to find a cure. You volunteered me for plague research? Her mouth could barely form the words. What else was I to do? Cinder's jaw hung. She shook her head dumbly, as all 3 yellow sensors focused on her. But nobody survives the testing. How could you? Nobody survives the plague. If you care for Peony as much as you claim to, you'll do as I say. If you hadn't been so selfish, you would have volunteered yourself after you left the market today, before coming here and ruining my family again. But take her away. She is yours. Cinder was too stunned to move as the nearest android held a scanner up to her wrist. It beeped and she flinched back. Lynn Cinder, it said in his metallic voice, your voluntary sacrifice is admired and appreciated by all citizens of the Eastern Commonwealth. A payment will be made to your loved ones as a show of gratitude for your contribution to our ongoing studies. Her grip tightened on the mag belt. No, that's what this is really about, isn't it? You don't care about Peony. You don't care about me. You just want the stupid payout. Audrey's eyes widened, her temples pulling taut against her skull. She crossed the room in 2 steps, the back of her hand whipping across Cinder's face. Cinder fell against the doorframe and pressed a hand to her cheek. Take her, said Audrey. Get her out of my sight. I didn't volunteer. You can't take me against my will. The android was unperturbed. We have been authorized by your legal guardian to take you into custody through the use of force, if necessary. Cinder curled her fingers, balling a fist against her ear. You can't force me to be a test subject. Yes, said Audrey, her own breathing labored. I can, so long as you are under my guardianship. You don't really think this will save Peony, so don't pretend this is about her. She has days. The chances of them finding a cure before... Then my only mistake was in waiting too long to be rid of you, Audrey said, running the washcloth between her fingers. Believe me, Cinder, you are a sacrifice I will never regret. The treads of one of the med-droids clattered against the carpet. Are you prepared to come with us? Cinder pursed her lips and lowered her hand from her face. She glared at Audrey, but could find no sympathy in her stepmother's eyes. A new hatred boiled up inside her. Warnings flashed in her vision. No, I'm not. Cinder swung the mag belt, smacking it hard against the android's cranium. The robot fell to the floor, treads spinning midair. I won't go. Scientists have already done enough to me already. A second android rolled towards her, initiating Procedure 240B, forcible removal of cyborg draft subject. Cinder sneered and shoved the end of the mag belt at the android's sensor, shattering the lens and thrusting it into its back. She spun around to face the last android, already thinking of how she would run from the apartment, wondering if it would be too risky to call a hover, wondering where to find a knife for cutting out her ID chip. Otherwise, they were sure to track her. Wondering if Aiko would be fast enough to follow. Wondering if her legs could carry her all the way to Europe. The med-droid approached too fast. She stumbled, changing the trajectory of the mag belt, but the android's metal pincers grabbed her wrist first. Electrodes fired. Electricity sizzled through Cinder's nervous system. The voltage overwhelmed her wiring. Cinder's lips parted, but the cry stuck in the back of her throat. She dropped the mag belt and collapsed. Red warnings flashed across her vision until, in an act of cyborg self-preservation, her brain forced her to shut down. End of Chapter 6.
Thank you everyone for joining me. Check back weekly for more read-alouds. We'll have new ones posted every week. And be sure to check out our website, sonomalibrary.org, for up-to-date resources and information. We miss you all. Stay safe. And remember, make reading a part of every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. And have fun with it.